Rory, how bad was it?
It was about as bad as it can be. Take the Liverpool game out of the equation. Liverpool when they lost 7-0. It's the worst Manchester United performance I think I've ever seen. It really was. And if we're all completely honest about it, it's the final performance, isn't it? It had that element of closure to it. It felt like the fat lady had sung. You know, you have those moments. It did. You know, you have those moments, don't you? You know, when you just know it's over. For example, when Ole Gunnar Solskjaer got beat at Vicarage Road, or when Antonio Conte drew 3-3 with...
I did that last interview with him.
Was that you?
That was me, yeah.
But you know that game, we just knew that it was over. Whether it finishes that day, whether it finishes in 2 weeks, whether it finishes in a year, it's over. The project is over. When Andre Villas-Boas went to Napoli with Chelsea, it was over. We got battered in Naples, and whether he got sacked that night or not, you just know you have that statement result, that statement battering, where the players are no longer buying into your ethos, your ideology, whatever that may be, is not being adopted by the players, and it is definitively provable that it's over. That was the Tottenham at-home performance. What
was so bad about it?
I mean, everything. It was lacklustre.
The first half in particular, I suppose.
The first half was appalling. Like, if Andre Onana wasn't as on it, I don't know how many goals they would have scored. They had 12 shots on goal. Tottenham in the first half.
Was it disgusting, as Gary Neville called it?
Yeah, it was. And, you know, Gary Neville said something very interesting here, because... You know, if you were to criticise, and when Gary Neville speaks, it's important to listen. Like, he's about as established a footballer as you can possibly be.
But disgusting was quite strong.
It was, but it was the other thing he said that I think is really insightful.
And actually, just said awful.
He could, but he's right with disgusting. But do you know what else he said? He said that Ten Hag was out of his depth.
Yeah.
And I think that is about as cutting as you can possibly say about a manager. Because what you're saying there is, you're not saying he got it tactically wrong, or the personnel needed to change. He got his squad selection wrong. He got his team selection wrong. He was outthought maybe by Ange Postecoglou. He's not saying that at all. Because all of those things can easily be equalised. All of those things can easily be worked on. If Gary Neville simply said, I think he got the team selection wrong, Rasmus Højlund should have started, that's easy. You can change that. A manager being out of his depth, coming from a Manchester United icon like Gary Neville, it's so cutting. And it's right. So I think that Gary Neville's assessment, you could call it harsh. I mean, he's gone for the jugular, hasn't he? But I would also say that it's basically spot on. And it was that final performance. How he's been given a stay of execution to go into that Porto. People are constantly saying this. You heard this. They need to win their next 2 games. Porto is one of them. His record in Europe, he's won one game out of 9 in Europe. How's he going to go to Porto and win? And then beat Villa.
Probably because they don't have anyone lined up. Yes, you've got Ruud van Nistelrooy waiting in the wings, and he wasn't overly supportive, whereas we see other managers going into their backroom staff and speaking a lot more. We don't really see that from Erik Ten Hag.
I know, he's like the Grim Reaper there, isn't he? It's like the Grim Reaper,
rain,
just lurking.
Splashing on his bald head. It's a very wet look. But I want to ask you about Paul Scholes in terms of what he said. He said that United looked dead flat and an uncoached team, which just further supports your comments.
And it's 3 years in the making. We're in his 3rd season. You know, if it was, say it was even Postecoglou, just a year into the project, you go, all right, this is Ten Hag's 3rd season. It's Ten Hag's players. It's Ten Hag's tactics. They've spent so much money. 600 million quid he's spent, and they're all his players. And it really isn't working. And I don't see now what's the point in persevering with him. Because even if it isn't over today, even if he beats Porto and Villa, it's still over. It's still
so
totally unsalvageable.
Why?
Well, it's part of the reason why I think they might have stuck with him is because Manchester United did this really weird thing in the summer where we know that they went and spoke to all of the possible candidates. So they spoke to Thomas Frank, they spoke to Roberto De Zerbi.
Thomas Tuchel, Mauricio Pochettino.
Exactly. They spoke to the managers that they thought may be capable of replacing Erik Ten Hag. What has then happened is Manchester United and Ineos and everybody involved in the club have decided that Ten Hag is better than them. Ten Hag is more suited to them because they interviewed De Zerbi and they decided De Zerbi wasn't right. Ten Hag was right. They interviewed Thomas Frank. They decided he wasn't right. They decided that Erik Ten Hag was right. So now it's got to the stage where presumably anyone that we know they've spoken to has been discarded already. Ten Hag is seen as better than them, so you can't go to them, which basically means that it's either Van Nistelrooy, Southgate.
Yeah, Ruud van Nistelrooy.
And I think if you ask a lot of Manchester United fans, while I know a lot have had it...
What are they thinking? What are the fans that you're
the ones that in my
saying?
very small social circle of Manchester United fans, the ones I'm aware of concede that Ten Hag isn't doing well enough and probably want him gone. But they don't want him gone if the answer is Gareth Southgate.
Right.
So they would rather persevere with Erik
So it's
Ten
the
Hag.
best of a bad situation.
Yes, and I don't see how they can now renege on the decision that they made in the summer and go to one of those managers.
Yeah.
You can't,
Because they're backtracking.
You're backtracking.
Backing a manager that you've just allowed all these money and these transfers, and it would be a big setback.
I also think it's very important, like, Ineos have made mistakes here. Like, we were taught that Ineos were going to be, it was a new look, a new vision. You know that French thing? Like, the more things change, the more things stay the same, that expression that they have. It's that, isn't it? Because it's new players, it's new personnel. They've had issues at the back, and they've bought in Lenny Yoro. I know he's injured, but that's also an epidemic at Manchester United. But they've bought in Mazraoui. Not good enough. They've bought in De Ligt. Useless. They've bought in the central midfielder who's going to change it all, Ugarte.
First Premier League start, though, so...
Oh, but come on, he's so bad. He's so bad.
Give him time, though.
No, I'm not writing him off, but when you spend that...
Like
not forever, I'm not writing him off,
Okay.
but that performance in itself was unforgivable. Like, Paris Saint-Germain are going to end up with 50 million quid there, if it all goes to plan. They must be laughing their socks off in Gay Paris. They must be over the moon. They're going to end up with £50 million for Ugarte. So I don't really see how he can stay. I also don't really see how he can leave now, because when you actually explore... So what we can do as fans is go really reactionary. Sack him now. Sack him at half-time, in fact. Go,
And
okay.
fans can, they can be impatient.
Oh, yeah. I'm an impatient football fan, no doubt. I'm bad for it. But, if you actually logically and rationally explore this, like, let's actually do it, Kate. As a social experiment, try
Well,
it.
we were actually speaking to Joe Smith earlier on from the Stretford Paddock podcast, and he was saying, well, actually, I'd rather stick with Erik Ten Hag because we don't have a solution. So even though we're waking up this morning to all the headlines, it's writings on the wall, it's time for him to go, well, actually, if you're the owners and the board, they were there watching. We saw Dan Ashworth there. We saw Brailsford sitting there thinking, well, we don't have a solution.
But that's their fault. Look, they've made this mistake. They've made this mistake by keeping him. And they didn't even really believe in it themselves, did they? Because they only extended a year. They didn't give him a new contract. No.
And when you look at how Brighton do it, I mean, they're probably already looking at the next manager that they're coming. That is how you do it. To look at the blueprint from Brighton. But with Manchester United, they don't have a solution lined up so far.
And it's this new ownership's money and decision-making in the transfer market. Like, the point of the new strategy is that the players come in, and even if you sack Ten Hag, the players that come in will still be good enough to play for the next manager. But Manchester United have scored in one game out of their last 4. 3 games, they haven't scored a goal.
Yeah.
Out of the last 4. Apart from Southampton, everyone in the league has scored more goals than Manchester United. Even Wolverhampton Wanderers, who are bottom of the league.
Yeah, 5 goals in the last 6 league games.
Yeah, and Wolves have scored 6.
Yeah.
So everybody's outscoring them. Joshua Zirkzee, Rasmus Højlund. These are the signings that are meant to score the goals.
Well, Rasmus Højlund isn't there, and I do feel as though they're missing him.
Well, I mean, he was an option. He came on. And Zirkzee, he's had his moments, I suppose, but...
And then Erik Ten Hag has said he'll bring us goals. Let's as bad as Manchester United were, let's give some credit to Tottenham, shall we? Because
they were amazing.
They were so good, and Brennan Johnson in particular, 4 in 4 for him now. I think he particularly had a very good game, as well as Mickey van der Ven.
He needed it. Mickey van der Ven was brilliant, but where I give the most credit, I thought man of the match far and away was Kulusevski, and I also thought that Ange Postecoglou, who I've been very snide about on this very show, he deserves an awful lot of credit because he's redefined him, hasn't he? He's almost like reimagined the player that Dejan Kulusevski was. In my head, he was always one of the inside forwards, one of the wingers playing in a similar way that you would expect, I don't know, Bukayo Saka to play. And he's been remoulded into an archetypal number 8. And he has the physicality to do it. He has the art and the craft to score a gorgeous goal. A deft little flick like that.
Yeah. He made that look easy, didn't he?
Yeah, and it's not. It's not, because it's also very athletic, and you have to have the audacity to try that. Like, he's an excellent player, and Kulusevski deserves nothing but credit, but I have to eat a bit of humble pie here. Very intelligent from Postecoglou to reimagine him and play him in that position. But you are right to flag Van der Ven as well. But again, as much as I think Van der Ven is brilliant, and that's the second time we've seen that marauding run so far this season, 6 games.
Yeah.
We saw Manchester United concede a goal because the Twente right-back picks the ball up in his own half and just runs the length of the pitch. Ten Hag told us that will never happen again. and it happened about 72 hours later. It's over, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, it is over. The fat lady
you know
is
what?
singing.
They probably targeted that.
Je ne
Actually,
regrette rien.
What was the rest?
Yeah.
But no, Ange Postecoglou was very good. And actually, what I did admire from him in his post-match was when he was put to the question was put to him, is that a statement win? And actually, he could have said, yes, actually, it's really good for us. It was one of the best performances this season. But he decided to not go with that.
What did he say?
He just said, oh, no, it's just one of another good win.
Oh, he's wrong, I think, on that. Because it is a huge... To go to Old Trafford and take the game to Manchester United like that is massive.
What does that say to him about as a manager in respect to the other manager? He already knows Erik Ten Hag is under enough pressure already. Yeah. I think within the managers' union, you kind of think, well, like, he doesn't need
I guess it's quite nice. And maybe he's being quite blasé about beating Manchester United. Maybe he's not seeing it. But I think I would love to not give Postecoglou much credit. I would love that. But I think honestly, going to Old Trafford, even when they are in the doldrums,
well. If
you go to Old Trafford and score 3 goals and don't concede, even if they're in the doldrums with the worst manager that they've had for 50 years, even if that's the case, it's still a huge result. And it's one of those results I think that we will remember for a long time, because I think it's the day the music died. It's the day it ended for Manchester United. Basically, I think Postecoglou ended it.
Yeah.
Postecoglou will be the architect of the end of the Ten Hag era, and we will always remember that fixture for that reason.
On AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.